I don't have any other white, so if this doesn't work, I'll try to find something else. This may bleed through too much. Check, check, check. Checkity, check, check. I can't see it all back there, so. Okay. Okay. Cool.
We had a great day today. We were able to address some needs for this fall, and then we put together a really quality group for the future. Obviously, there'll be some players that show up, like the Carrs and McCleskey's of last year that will play that we don't know about. But by bringing Malik in here, Larry, Traylon Weber, those guys should give us some help in the first game, address a couple issues. We're hoping that Shane Richards will give us a little more size up front. So we're really excited about our class. We were more specific to needs this year than we ever have been. And I thought our coaches did a great job. I think the university support, the academics, everybody that was involved in our official visits really contributed, the people in the community at Stillwater. So we're really looking forward to getting these guys here in June. Obviously, we have a couple of them that are here, but for the most part, we were able to address some current needs and put some guys in the program for the future.
Question. 7 offensive linemen. Does that underscore, I don't know, what a priority it is for you to get your numbers back? And you know, it's a percentage deal anyway. If maybe if 4 of the 7 pan out, then it's a good haul for you.
We've been deficient in that area for a number of years. You know, we were going on 3 years of completely rebuilding our offensive line for a variety of reasons, and this should be the final step, which would allow us to get back on track in the future where we can take maybe 3 a year. 2 guys, as I mentioned, Shane Richards and Larry, you know, Shane's 350 and Larry's 320 now, should be able to help us in the first game. And then we have guys in the program that have some size. You can look and see where we're at. Tyler Brown is listed here as 300. He's 325. Tevin Jenkins is listed here at 290. He's 310. Keegle is listed at 295. He was 305 when I saw him last week. Tremunda is 350. He's probably 340. I don't think he's quite that big. So we have some size, and we have some guys that may be mature enough to help us right away, and then some youth to put in the program and develop them.
Depending on who I ask, I get one version of Teron Moore, and then from another source, I'll get another version as to whether he will be here or whether he'll have to start at a junior college.
He is on track to be here in June. I'm not sure where that information came from. He's on track to be with us in June.
You got 5 Texas high school athletes on your list. Right, and in the last 5 years before that, you routinely signed 15, 15, 12, 18, 20 Texas high school guys. Was this year just kind of an anomaly, and you went, you know, to a greater range to get guys, or is that a reflection of how competitive it is down there for guys with Baylor, TCU, Houston, everybody kind of?
Well, I think it's always competitive, but I think that's something else that people have taken off and run with. We have a connection with Devin Harper in Tennessee with Coach Atkins. We had a connection in Minnesota with Matt. He's a 5th-generation Oklahoma State. We had a connection in Canada with Eamon because of his relationship with Ogbaugh. Who else would that be? New Mexico was a junior college player. We've always, in junior college, you have to jump around a little bit. Larry Williams was a junior college player. Rodarius is from North Louisiana, Shreveport. Essentially, that's East Texas for us. So they're really right here. So when you look at it, there were some connections a little further away than what we traditionally had, but we haven't really taken off and become a national recruiting program. There were just connections this year.
Is that a goal for you?
No, we want to recruit Oklahoma and Texas, and we continue to work Kansas, but we don't have any desire to go across the country unless we feel like there's a reason for us to do so.
nice to have 4 Oklahoma kids in the class. I'm sure that
Sure.
it makes the high school coaches happy and makes you happy. Just is that an important part of the program?
Well, I think it's important that you always want to start as close as possible to where you're located and work your way out. And we have good high school football in the state. It's getting better each year, in my opinion. The players that come from the state of Oklahoma don't get as much recognition. The years that we were winning 11 and 12 and 10 and 9, and we had that stretch, we had a pretty high percentage of players on our team from the state of Oklahoma. So there's good football here. There were a couple players that are certainly going to be good Division I football players that we weren't able to get or went elsewhere for whatever reasons, and maybe we weren't in a position to offer them based on what our needs were for this recruiting class. So we start in Oklahoma and we work out, and you go regionally where the players are. Year in and year out, you're going to have 250 or 350 players from the state of Texas. And so there's a large number, and we have great relationships down there. That's where we spend 90% of our time. It's a little bit unusual this year just because of some of the connections that we had with some young men that were scattered across the country.
With that large group of offensive linemen, a lot of them were listed as tackles, but when you bring these guys in, is there kind of an expectation that they could shift positions just depending on the need and how they perform in fall camp? Do you kind of wait to slot those guys until you really see them play?
Yes, I think everybody's just listed them as a tackle. I'm not sure really where that comes from, but when they get here, they need to be in a center spot. We'll find a guy in this class that can play center. Each class, it's very important to snap. And then guys that are a little bit longer with more range and reach usually fall in the tackle position. And from that point on, you move back into the guard position.
When you sat down with us a couple of weeks ago, you were talking about your message basically was that you couldn't care less really how a class is ranked. Mm-hmm. So, and there's all this social media chatter about what's wrong with this OSU class. What's your message to people about the ranking in the class?
Well, there's examples of players that aren't ranked. Their season is complete. They weren't ranked, and a week later they become a 3 or 4 star. So how does that happen? The season's been over for 2 months. Well, it's because somebody out there with a service wanted somebody to be ranked higher than the other. I'm not debating whether stars could be accurate, but I think a mistake that we could make here at Oklahoma State, and each school has their own opinion, is that we could offer and base our recruiting on what somebody else feels or how they evaluate a prospect. And so with us, we don't have anybody on our list that we don't feel like that will graduate from college, be a productive player here at Oklahoma State, fit into what we think is important in having success here based on who we are, where we're located, what our philosophy is, all the different areas that we've developed and built here in the last 12 years. We think these guys give us the best chance to demonstrate success in the classroom and on the football field here at Oklahoma State. Are there players out there that we tried to get that we couldn't? Sure. And there are also some that may be rated very high by some recruiting service that we didn't think fit here at Oklahoma State that may have wanted to come to Oklahoma State. So in doing this for a long time, there's more of a fit, per se, style, character, willingness to do what we think is important to have success here than us evaluating what some service may put on the player from a situation, stars, 3 or 4 or 5 star players.
So who is the guy on this list, just a guy as an example, who when you evaluated him and you pursued him, you thought, I can't believe this guy is considered a 3-star guy, or you thought was really undervalued in that way?
Well, and again, I'm guessing here because I don't know, but most of these guys that we have are 3 stars, right? Just about everybody. I mean, that's what somebody told me. So you're essentially looking at everybody on the list there's different ways to look at him. Like Tyrell Alexander is a very skilled athlete that's played at different spots and has just scratched the surface on really what he can do. He could be 20 pounds heavier in a year and be very athletic and do a lot of different things. So, Tyler Brown is from a state where there's not a lot of recognition from a star standpoint unless somebody comes in from out of state and offers him late, and somebody says that guy must be a good player. We got to bump his stars up. So. Just how they develop. I'm not sure really how you go about that. It's so hard. Like last year at this time, we didn't really mention McCleskey, and we only talked about Carr because we took him this day of signing day. That was the only reason we talked about those guys. We certainly didn't talk about them playing in the first game. So it's so unpredictable, Bill. It really is. It would be unfair. To me, like you look right down the road here, I think Dylan Stoner is a fantastic football player. From a star standpoint, somebody may have not thought so. But I know his history. I trust their coaches. I listen to them. I know he punts. I know he can hold. I know he can kick. I know he plays corner. I know he plays wideout. And I know he won about 150 games in the last 3 years. I like what he brings to the table. Somebody else may not feel that way, but for us, we feel really good about him. So it's hard for me to predict that, but these guys are players that we feel like can certainly have a lot of success here at Oklahoma State.
So you think like a guy like Tyler Brown, if he played at DeSoto or Cibolo still, you think he's a four-star guy?
Well, I don't know specifically him or stars, but when I see some of that, I don't think there's any question that the players in the state of Oklahoma don't get the recognition that some of the players do that come from other places in the country that are more high profile. And I think the comparison there would be when you look, and I don't know for sure, I may be exposing myself here a little bit, but this Sunday when you watch the Super Bowl, when they do the introductions, there's always one or two guys that come out and you're like, it's from where? And you're thinking, I didn't even know that they played football there. So that player at some point was probably a free agent or a very late round pick, and he's now playing in the Super Bowl just based on where he came from. I think that's the best example for me to give. So we feel really good about the players that are coming out of the state of Oklahoma. And I'll be honest with you, I can't say who they are because it's against the rules, but there's 4 players that I have on my board in my office for us to chart and watch because I think they're going to be really good players, and we didn't offer them a scholarship. And I think we missed on them. But the reason we didn't offer them a scholarship is because it didn't fit what we already have. And Oklahoma State does not have the luxury of overextending itself and then taking things away from kids in the end. We cannot continue to build and develop our football program and the character of who we are by doing that. We don't have that luxury. So we have to be very careful about not positioning ourselves in that if somebody later today says, we want to come to Oklahoma State, that means some other young man doesn't get to come to Oklahoma State. And that's not personal. That's just the way it is here. That's not the way that we've been able to have success over the long haul. So my point is, backing up what you said and what Kyle mentioned, is there's good players in the state of Oklahoma that we weren't able to offer a scholarship that if somebody said you got to make a wager on it, I'd bet they're going to be good football players. And I'll be mad that we didn't. So,
being that you were able to address a lot of needs in this recruiting cycle with an assistant coaching staff that was so new, I mean, you got to be happy with the efforts of those guys in their first cycle, picking up the recruiting trails of former coaches. That just seems like a challenge.
It's difficult. The one thing we talked about this a month ago is recruiting is about trust and relationships and what groundwork that you lay in a geographical area, and then you prove that what you say is the way it's going to be, in our opinion, at Oklahoma State. So we have to go into a high school, a metroplex area, and we have to say this is what we can do for these young men. We can't guarantee you're going to play on the field. We can't guarantee that you're going to get X number of catches or this many sacks. But we are going to lay out for you a plan to give you the very best opportunity to graduate from college. We're not going to tell you that you're going to graduate in 3.5 years when in most cases it's going to take 4. And if you drop some classes, it's going to take 4.5. Guess what? That's the real world, okay? And for probably half of us in this room, it took 5. But we're on track to graduate in 4 years here. And this is what we're going to do. And if you follow the guidelines and you stay with us, you're going to do very well. And then we back it up. So we can go back into that area and say, look, this is what we've done with Zach Crabtree. This is what we've done with so-and-so. And if you send this young man to us, we're going to do the same thing for him. So my point is that when we send a new coach in there, we have to rely on the history of what we have here, essentially what I have here for 12 years. We can say, I know I'm new. Marcus Royal can say, this is my area. I hadn't been in here, but Coach Gundy's been there, and this is the way it's going to be. But he has to develop those relationships and build the trust with those coaches in order to benefit with the players. So it's not easy, but I said this a month ago, and I'll say it again, that I think this is the very best recruiting staff we've ever had. I think they're good evaluators. I think they have good personalities. I think they come across well. And they understand the message that we're sending is we're going to tell you exactly the way it is. We want you to come to Oklahoma State for the reasons that we want you to come. We want it to be the same way for you. It needs to be mutual. We're not going to BS you. What you see is what you get. And I think those guys did a very good job of getting in there, is in a sense late, because right now we have already offered 49 players for 17. So you see how far along we are. And when those guys got on board last year, it was already happening. You have to make up a little ground. That's the way it is.
Specifically with Coach Adkins, I mean, with just the wealth of recruiting experience he has in the SEC and everywhere he's been, I mean, how key was it to have a guy like him bring in so many offensive linemen? It seems like that's a good fit.
It is a good fit. And there's experience that takes place in recruiting, and guys that have been out there for 20 years, they understand. They know the ropes, and they have a feel for young men. And some guys can recruit well early in their career, but they're not going to be as good as they are after they've done it for 20 years because you just get better at anything that you do over and over and over. And he's got a lot of experience, and some of the areas that he had to recruit to pick up some players, they knew him. And so there's some carryover there. If you hire a coach that's recruited a certain area and has a name there and he changes his shirt, then essentially the trust factor is already set up, and it becomes now, okay, this is Oklahoma State football. Do they have a program, and do they have a situation that we feel comfortable with? Well, I already know Tim Duffy. Tim Duffy was with another school, but I trust him. So then there's that mesh. There's a lot that goes into it in recruiting.
With Baylor and TCU having sustained themselves, and then like with Tom Herman at Houston and A&M in the SEC, is recruiting in Texas now just like different than it was 10 years ago, or is it more competitive? Is it more difficult than it was 10 years ago?
It's not necessarily difficult from a structure standpoint, but it's very competitive. You can do some research. You can take a map of the state of Texas and you can put a dot for the schools that recruit at our level in the state of Texas, where they have players they signed today. And we've already done it. And you'll see that the average drive distance to some of the schools that you mentioned is probably a fourth of the average drive distance to the young men that we recruit to get to Oklahoma State, excluding Canada, excluding New Mexico, excluding Tennessee. Those are kind of rare circumstances. And so for that reason, it is and needs to be more strategic based on population. You know, I've said it before and I'll say it again, that if you're selling vacuum cleaners and that's what you do to earn and make a living, you have to go somewhere that you think you can sell the most vacuum cleaners with the least amount of overhead expense. That way you get more profit. And so we continue to push hard where we can get young men that know a lot about our program, know a lot about our university, that the percentage is higher in most cases with young men that are more familiar with you and your school than they are if you go a long ways away. Doesn't mean that you can't recruit, but at some point, what's the money, the time spent, the hours, all that for what you're getting back? You know, you have to look at it from a business standpoint. So there's some truth to it is more difficult for a variety of reasons, but that's not going to change our approach. There are enough quality young men that want to graduate from college and be a part of a team that can compete at this level that we can get our hands on. And on an average year, you're bringing 18 players in, maybe 20, that will benefit this university and this team. And so we don't really have to change our format. We only have to look at what's taking place, make adjustments, continue to work hard, be upfront and honest, and sell our program, do it the right way, back up what we have to say, and we'll always get quality people in this program.
You've offered were at your junior day event. Great majority or?
Over half.
Are there any previous classes you look back upon as kind of your perfect example of what you want to bring in a class in terms of had some NFL guys, had some contributors, that type of stuff?
Yeah, I mean, that's a good question, and I hate to say it, but I can't even remember who's in the class anymore. What we're looking for is, one, we want young men that are interested in graduating and want to be a part of our program the way it's set up. And we also know that if they don't compete and play at a high level and you don't have success, then it doesn't work out. So you have to combine it and put it all together. And sometimes you have players that are potential NFL players. And then, in our opinion, you have to have some other guys that maybe not are that level, because there's only so many carries to go around. There's only so many throws. So there's only so many catches. There's only so many sacks and so on and so forth. And we all know that we're living in a world now that if you're spread too thin in areas with key guys, they're going to leave. More so now than ever. So I think you do the very best you can to fit the criteria for what we think gives our players a chance to have success, and Oklahoma State can continue to play at a very high level in football. But then also, it's okay to have guys that maybe aren't naturally as gifted that they can play in the NFL. There's a lot of good football players that won't have the opportunity to play in the NFL because they just don't have that special ability. There's a lot of good football players that are in high school that every coach in the state would love to have on their high school team, but they're not going to play at our level because they don't have that gift. They don't have that size. And so I think a mixture is the question that you're asking. And I apologize, but my 14-year-old's at school and there's supposed to be something going on. Just a second. He was supposed to call me earlier. Bill, you'll vouch for me, right? Yep. And I don't know what's going on unless he's got somebody that's going to sign. But I have to do it. I'm the only one he can get in touch with right now. Well, he's busy. So anyway, what I'm saying is, if he calls back, just answer and just tell him. Just tell him he's not good enough to play here. Okay. Anyway, so there has to be a mix, you know. And I've heard the story from a basketball analysis of it. You guys that hang around me a lot have heard me say, you got to have you can't have 5 guys that want to score 30 points. You got to have a couple guys that can shoot and play, and somebody's got to set a screen, somebody's got to die for a loose ball, and somebody's got to play defense like crazy in order to be successful. It's the same thought process for us in football.
So, in a calendar year, what percentage of your time is spent, and I'm talking about the staff as a whole, preparing to play football versus recruit? What percentage of your work year is committed to recruiting? Is it as much as 40%? It just seems
Well, I've got the 17 sheets on my desk right now. The coaches are all putting on my desk. I want you to watch them to okay to do the offer. And it's 16 today, and it's 17 now. So in the off season, when we're not practicing, it's got to be 6 hours a day. During the season, it's probably limited to 2 hours a day. one maybe, based on where you're at in the season. Once you get a class, if you're going to offer and sign, if you're trying to sign 20 and you have 18 committed, then you're a little bit more of just touching base. When you're in a position we are now, next year I think we're going to take around 16, and we've got maybe one or two committed, then the workload is really high at this time in order to try to find the right guys.
But you think maybe it might be as high as 40%?
Year round? When you take into account evaluation, calls, letter writing, I would say it's true, because at night, when we're home or watching our kids play or something and we're on the phone, then we're recruiting. So I would say it could be 40%. If you just take in the off season, we usually work 10 hours a day. In the season, we usually work about 14 to 16. So if you just take 40% of those hours that you're supposed to be working and include the night work, I would say it's probably 40%. I mean, I would say that's probably correct.
Anything else, Coach?
All right, guys, thanks.